How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Brendan Dunn, and this is the dry run for our new show, IntelliGents. Simply put, it's a group of fellas chatting about everything under the sun, from politics to sports to all your other current events that's happening. Our goal is to make sure that we provide you with intellectual discourse while keeping you highly entertained. I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the fellas that are going to be the core of this group of IntelliGents. My man, Damon Parrish, one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the city of Houston. Also, Mr. Irreverence. My man, Dr. Rod Singleton. How are you, man? How you been? Cool. Emergency room physician and the wordsmith extraordinaire. Last but not least, Charles Sherrod Jr., tech guru, and Mr. Wisdom. Fellas, y'all ready to start?
Let's do this.
Let's get it on. So first thing we're going to talk about is transgenders in sports. Recently, we had a couple of trans women that ran up in upstate New York, or was it Pennsylvania? Upstate Pennsylvania, that did some 100 and 200 meter running.
Killed two.
Blew everybody out the water. Some people don't like it though. They're saying, look, we shouldn't have these transgender individuals in the sport that they aren't physically attached or biologically attached to as originals.
I don't see this as controversial.
You don't see it as controversial.
No, not at all.
I'm gonna let you start.
No,
Go ahead.
I want to start.
I mean, it's like watching a real life version of Juwanna Man. You know what I'm saying?
I caution you guys. I caution you gentlemen to tread lightly on this
It
topic.
doesn't make any sense.
Please tread lightly, guys.
So here's what I think. I'm gonna be real honest about. You know, women have always fought for equality. I mean, they have been Beyonce'd out on this. Independent woman. I'm worth this. Men and women are equal. So if you gonna parade equality around, which there's no problem with being equal. I'm gonna say that right. Matter of fact, I promote equality, but you got to be equal across the board. So regardless of them being original men transitioning over to women, why not make it all about men and women together? That's my opinion.
Original men?
Original men. I mean, they OGs.
All right.
So they didn't come in this world, women.
I don't see this as a feminist woman's equality thing. I mean, you can choose to be a man or female. That's your choice. Whatever sex you choose, the sex you choose. But there's a difference between gender, I guess, masculinity, femininity versus sex, male and female. Men are born different. We're born stronger. It is what it is. Now, through conditioning and working out, somebody can overcome that for sure. I've met plenty of strong women. But by virtue, men are born stronger, and it's a not fair comparison because you take off a penis and you add breasts. Now you can run a race with women who are smaller, who aren't naturally as strong as you are, and don't have the ability to be as strong as you are.
Don't you think though that might get women to elevate their athleticism? Now that they're competing on the same level as the men?
Can't change nature like that.
I mean, if you had Brittany Griner out there with Dwight Howard, she might start dunking a little bit more, which might get the next wave of women to start working, because that's what men don't just naturally just all of a sudden start dunking. They got those moon shoes on. They walking around doing all the.
I never wore moon shoes.
Nobody.
Well, I mean, some of these cats, you know.
I just woke up one day in 8th grade and started dunking.
You woke up like this.
Yeah.
So you telling me that you never had dudes in the weight room?
No, I just played ball.
Well, you were aerodynamically shaped, so.
I had
So you don't think an athlete like Brittany Griner or other tall WNBA players have the physicality and the work?
No, they absolutely do.
Hey, well, here's what I'm saying. They already have like a structured conditioning program. You don't think that these women will be dunking a lot better than the way they have already?
I think that every generation gets a little bit more athletic because they're pushing themselves a little bit harder.
But we're not talking about progression. We're talking about equality. You think that they can reach a level where they would be equal to a man given the same amount of work?
I believe in our women. I feel.
Dude, you're not in election. You're not in election mode right now.
No.
It's not campaign.
That's terrible.
Let's keep it real.
Seriously, so you don't believe that women can ever equal men in terms of physicality?
No, in certain so there's certain physical things you have to be specific. Pain tolerance is a physical attribute. Women, they far exceed our tolerance.
Absolutely.
That, right?
Absolutely.
Women are strong at certain things. Men are strong at certain things. Let's keep it real. My whole issue with this is, you never find a feminist or you never find a woman touting gender equality when there's a sinking ship. They don't mind getting off the boat first with the women and children, but when it comes to things like everything else.
No. Go ahead, expound.
I'm gonna exercise some restraint.
No, please. Free your mind. Don't be so shallow.
We probably need. This is crazy. So it's really just a matter of the rules catching up with society, right? There's a reason. Take trans men and women out of the equation. There's a reason that men and women sports are separate, right? Women can equal men in skill set, no problem. Serena Williams is a great tennis player. She's probably as great a tennis player as you've ever seen. But she herself said that if she had to play with men, that it would be a problem for her just because of the physicality, not because of the skill. So if you look at genetics and you look at what was happening, it was a race. So it doesn't matter how much you train, it doesn't matter what happens. You know, Allison Felix is not going to beat what's my man that ran the 100? Usain Bolt.
Seriously.
Well, no one's going to beat Usain Bolt, though.
But that's what I'm saying. But
Usain Bolt is
even
a freak of nature.
the 100-meter women's run is going to be the fastest woman, and the man is going to be the fastest man. It has to be.
So then
the
a
rules
follow-up
have
question.
to catch up.
Follow-up question then. When should equality apply?
When should
When should equality?
When should equality? Because it doesn't necessarily apply in sports, like you're saying, right? Or does it? Because I mean, you
Sure
can't
it
say
does.
how. Because if it applied in sports, then you'd have the women playing with the men, equals across the board.
Yeah, but sports isn't okay. But sports is a meritocracy. If sports is a meritocracy,
But
period.
everything is a meritocracy.
Not everything is
not
a
meritocracy.
meritocracy.
I mean,
But
business
okay,
is a meritocracy.
Business is a meritocracy, but it's not. There's no physicality involved in it, right? If you take a woman lawyer and a male lawyer, they both study, they both have skills, they can compete in the same marketplace. But if you said at the end of our closing arguments, we'll have to have a wrestling match to see who wins, now you have an advantage, right? So there's a physical advantage. There's a reason that it's separate. That's all it is. It's basic genetics and it's basic fairness. If it was because in sports, it's a meritocracy. If we all step out on the football field, the person who hits the hardest, is the biggest and the strongest, is going to get the start.
So what if they want to play? Should we
If they
let
want
them
to play, there's plenty of women that do walk into other arenas and try to play, and if they're good enough, they can do that. There's women that do field goal kicking.
But do you think that women should be allowed in men's sports, or would it ruin men's sports if you even open it up for them?
I think you allow it if that's what somebody wants, but let's not kid ourselves and say genetics doesn't play something.
Oh, I agree with that it does, but go ahead, Ron's about to
What
bust
I don't
some gas.
understand is, why do we have to intellectualize everything? Some things are just common sense. My grandmother used to always say, don't be so open-minded, boy, till your brains fall out, right? Let's think about how society itself has already accepted that there are differences between men and women physically.
Right.
We've all done it. This is why domestic violence is such an issue, right? This is why, we don't look at it as a society, we don't look at it the same way when a woman assaults a man as the converse, right? Because we understand that there's a difference in physicality between a man and a woman, correct? So I don't really see why this is really controversial. This is really liberalism and run amok.
So should the trans women be allowed to run?
What's
Well,
trans women?
That's the little boys that went into Little Women.
They should run with the men.
They should run with the men. Okay.
So this requires a very strict preference, and you didn't do this because of the
No. Throw intellectualism out the window.
No.
Speak with your heart,
We have to acknowledge the time. We have to acknowledge the zeitgeist in which we live, right? And that is, we are very particular about LGBTQ issues. Let me say this: I am a profound
Mr.
advocate
Astaire,
for
quit
LGBTQ
tiptoeing.
rights.
Answer the question.
Listen, but I'm going to say this:
You've been saying this.
you should compete in sports with your assigned gender.
It took you all of that to say I agree with
Yeah,
that.
because I'm scared
Maybe,
that
maybe not even that.
if I use the inappropriate pronoun or
let's
something,
take
I want to get attacked.
Let's get into it because we're supposedly intelligent, right? But, so even if you look at it from a standpoint of, think about this: you have sports in different categories for many different types of people, even without the putting into effect transgender. Let's say you don't allow men who are in wheelchairs to race with men who are able-bodied with legs, right? They have their own Olympics. Oscar Pistorius, who had, remember
Ting.
right? Don't call it that. Right. There was a whole situation where he was allowed to run with people who were able-bodied, and some people thought he had an advantage because of right. Some people thought he had an advantage. So it's just in sports. You should categorize people who can compete on the same level. So
If
the
you
rules
can
just have to
kill
catch
a
up.
man, you can run with a man.
Man, why you being so ignorant today?
That's the bottom line.
You're the antithesis of our show, man.
Hey, I am who God made me. But I want to go ahead. Let's move it forward since we're talking about sports. You know, the Supreme Court just threw a bombshell out there. Now sports betting is legalized, or let me rephrase: every state is now allowed to choose whether or not to make sports betting illegal or legal in their state. Used to be they had something that was in place back with Bush that kept out sports betting. Now they busted wide open. So the original reason was because they thought, hey, if we don't manage this sports betting, then it pervades the providence of sports, and people will start cheating with a purpose, shaving points out, and doing all that kind of stuff. The argument that was made to get the Supreme Court to change their mind was basically, you can't force the states into following federal law like this. And actually, they won. They being the sports community won at every level up until the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, no, we don't agree with anybody below us. We're going to go ahead and let the states do what they do because we're commandeering their ability for states to do what they want to do. Does this hurt sports? Does it help sports? What's going on?
Well, I think so. First of all, you have to acknowledge that sports betting has been legal in the United States. It was legal in Nevada. So you can always bet on sports in Nevada. Now, I don't know if you can bet on collegiate sports. That I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
But for sure, everything. Okay. But for sure, Super Bowl was the highest betting sport of any sporting event in the United States. So sporting betting was always legal just in Nevada. And then, of course, everybody bets sports across the country, and bookies and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it hurts the sport at all. I mean, people already do it. It's already done. I think what it does is allows a chance to regulate it. Like prohibition, you move it out of the darkness into the light. You can regulate it. People are motivated for whatever reason they're motivated. Winners want to win. If you're going to cheat for betting, you're going to cheat for betting. And this is not going to hurt it or help it. The one thing I hope to have happen is if collegiate sports are allowed to be bet upon, then collegiate players should get paid. And I don't think it's fair that collegiate players they make all this money for everybody and get none for themselves.
They should have been getting paid.
Correct.
Regardless of
absolutely correct. But more to it now. If we are now allowed to bet on the winners and losers of collegiate sports, then that to me is different than beforehand, where all that was just like scholarships. It was just like put it on TV, highest bidder. You can kind of hide that any way you want. With sports betting, you get down to the nitty gritty. You're making money off people's talent and playing ability and wins and losses. And I think for collegiate sports, if they allow betting on that, the players should get paid.
Looks like Rod is in disgust and disagreement with
No, I agree.
Oh, that's just your resting disgust.
No, I just don't feel like this should be the driving force. But I think we all knew before betting became legalized, right, that the NCAA was a racket. Absolutely, it was a criminal
organization. It's the biggest hustle.
Yeah, so I mean that's a whole other podcast by itself. But I agree, man. I don't think that this is going to change the extent of corruption and that already exists in sports. We've already had scandals in sports, even when this has been illegal. So it doesn't change much for me.
No, I think it'll be very good for pro sports, bad for collegiate sports.
Why bad for collegiate? Well, why the juxtaposition of the two?
Well, because just for what David said, right? If you're in college, if I'm a college athlete, even if I'm a star college athlete, I get nothing for my efforts. And if I'm on my way to the pros, or maybe I'm just a guy who's not on his way to the pros, but my mama's lights off, and you come to me and say, listen, all we need, you guys can still,
think that
you
will
guys
create
can still
the point
win.
Shaving
Yeah, you guys can still win,
okay.
but y'all need to win by less than 5, or you need to do this or you need to do that. If I have no money in my pockets, then it becomes more enticing. If I'm a professional athlete making a professional athlete's salary, it's a little bit different. And I think the interest is going to be much higher in pro sports because you have just the casual fan aspect, right? Most people aren't watching, Milwaukee and Indiana playing on a random Tuesday night, but if you put $20 on the game, then maybe you'll watch it a little bit more. The ratings will go up. You'll watch some of these football games. So they'll get more interest from the casual fan. But for collegiate athletes, there's so much going on there with them not making money, that the more money you infuse, right? You got all these people around and they're looking at everybody. The coach making $4 million a year. You got, the friends that they see go pro making all this money. You see all this money around you and you can't get anything, and somebody comes to you and say, listen, man, all you got to do is keep doing what you're doing. But if y'all up by 5, make sure y'all win by 3 and not 5. So,
you brought
changes
up
everything.
You brought up something dealing with NFL or football and watching football. There's a crisis pending in football right now and who's going to be watching, who's going to abstain from watching, all because of this kneeling with the anthem issue and those lacking or supporting certain political views within sports. Interestingly enough, your president, 45, put out a call to arms to the NFL players and said, you know what? I feel like I'm going to try to meet you where you are a little bit, and you give me the names of some people that you want me to pardon, because, and this is how he prefaced it. You say that the justice system is unjust, so why don't I help out some people that you feel like have been unjustly put in prison, and I'll either give them clemency or I'll give them early term releases. You send me a list of names, my people will go through it, and we'll pardon some people. The interesting thing about this is that he set a precedent already, because he had Kim K give him a name, and a woman who's been in prison for the last 20 years as a drug mule, who was given a life sentence simply for being the drug mule, was just released the other day. Is this what? A couple questions for this. Is this what we want from the president? Number 2, is he on the right path? Number 3, should we at least let him do it? No.
Listen.
Wait, go ahead, start, Ron.
All right. First of all, I love to talk about the president. Everything that comes out of his mouth is self-serving. It's not intelligent. It's total opposite of what the show is about. However, I feel that this is a big red herring for the purposes that the whole kneeling protest was not even about injustices in general. It's very specific. It's about police brutality, disproportionately waged against black men, black women as well.
Wait, let me stop.
So,
you said it was not. It was very.
It
was very specific.
It was more specific than this. So he's changing the argument about this. So the protest was about addressing police brutality and disproportionate, even more aggressive policing in black communities versus others, right? That's what it was addressing.
Not necessarily. You don't think that might have been more so the catalyst, but not the overarching issue?
No, I think that the message that Colin Kaepernick is being the standard bearer for now is about police brutality and this discriminatory police practices. I think that's what he's addressing. I think all the other stuff is relevant, but it's not specific to why they are kneeling. And so none of what he's saying as far as the pardons addresses the situation that Colin Kaepernick and the rest of the NFL players are addressing with the protest. So it's a red herring to me. It doesn't really, it changes the narrative of the whole conversation.
Master stroke by him. He cannot lose.
Absolutely.
I agree. This was genius. For me, this was genius.
It energizes his base, right? His base, people who don't have in-depth knowledge of police brutality against blacks, or what Colin Kaepernick was protesting. All they know is, oh, they're over there complaining about something again, right? It gives him a no-lose situation, because he says, I went to him and I said, you can pardon anybody. Now, if they come to him and he does pardon somebody, he wins, because he says, look, I was able to let somebody go that, just like the pardon that he just did, right? Whether you like him or not, there's a woman that was in jail. We know she probably should not have been. In the micro sense, her freedom to her and her family and the people that care about that's great for them. They're not looking at what he's doing over here. They're not looking at what he's doing with the Hispanic community and things like that. Or if they say, no, we don't want to work with the president, then he goes to his base and says, well, look, see, I tried to work with them. They just won't listen. Y'all come vote for me in this next election. Like he's in a situation where he doesn't lose no matter what happens.
So here's why. So I agree with you, Chuck. I disagree with you for a couple reasons. One, him going to his base has no matter. His base will support him no matter what happens. His base will support him.
Yeah.
This is to appease not his base, but the swing voters and the moderate voters. Right. We also, those same people have said they won't support you. Period. So he's not. In my opinion, this won't get him any extra votes. However, I will say this. This is why I think this is a good move for him, why I think the players should take him up on it, and how I think he can lose. It's a good move for him for reasons you discussed. I'm not going to rehash. the players should absolutely take it up on him. You protested, and this is a chance to get some sort of not resolution, but something from your protest other than a loss of job. Now, here's how he can lose. The players should come to him, and not with 4 or 5 names, but 4 or 5,000. There are a lot of people that can be exonerated who are being drug mules across this country, right? So don't just go to him with the most top celebs and say, give me these 5. Go to him with the pattern of every person.
He still can't lose that.
So then he takes that list.
Because here's why.
Listen, he takes that list. He's not going to pardon all 5,000 people.
Right.
You know that. He'll pardon 1 or 2. And so then that in my opinion says, hey, you weren't really in this for the cause. You're in this for the votes. It cheapens everything you've done.
Nah, I still say
do it.
It's still a win because if you give him a list of 5,000 names, then again he can go back to his base or to the press or to swing voters and say, "Come on, man, this is ridiculous. These 5,000 people, nobody's gonna do the due diligence it takes to go through all 5,000 of those names and see, do they really need to be pardoned? Is it just somebody, is it just
done for him?
Yeah.
So
but nobody in the general public is gonna do that. They won't even read what's in these bills. They're definitely not gonna go through 5,000 names and go through.
So check this out.
This person be free.
You can go to every innocence project in this state. Every
I'm talking
city
about
has one,
but
and they have a list.
that's your field of expertise. I'm talking about the general person on the street. If you walk up to the general person on the street and ask them about the woman who was just pardoned, right? They'll say, "Oh yeah, she should be free." Why was she in jail?
Here's
You know what I mean? Most people don't even know that.
So then what you do is you take that list and you don't say pardon Brennan, pardon Chuck, pardon Rod for these reasons. You say pardon Brennan, Chuck, Rod, and Damon for this one reason. They all fit this one specific thing. They all had no criminal history. They were all charged with a low-level offense, and they got a inordinate amount of time, more time than they should have gotten. Here's these 3 criteria that all these people meet, and so for this reason they get it, and you can find that.
So let me chime in on this. So first, to your point about Charles saying that you don't think that his base will ever run away from it, I disagree with that. I think that if he's in a dangerous position with this only because his base is vitriolic. I mean, that's all they want to do is make America great again, and we all know what that means. If he becomes too liberal with trying to appease this secondary base for re-election purposes, he starts to lose some ground with them because they're like, that's not what you promised us. You really promised us hate. You really promised us discrimination. You really promised us some things, and you're not living up to that end of the bargain. If he starts doing it too much, right now he's in that fine little niche of space.
It's a win-win.
Hold on. I said right now he's good, but if he gets too liberal, then he starts to lose his base. Now the second part of this is I think what he did was genius, and here's why. He sees a bleeding body, and instead of suturing it up to actually help it heal, he puts a Band-Aid on it that staunches the bleeding, but it doesn't actually fix anything with it. And as the ER doc, you may say that's a terrible analogy, but for all those lay humans, we get it. But basically, all he did was he didn't fix the problem. He didn't fix the process. He's giving us, as you said, a red herring that says, hey, you know what? I'm going to give y'all some people, and not actually fixing what's wrong with the criminal justice system itself, but letting some people go that are part of this criminal justice system that will still perpetuate exactly what it's been doing. And on top of that, I think that no matter who if it's only 5 out of 5,000 or 500 out of 5,000, he still wins because we have too many people within the black community at least, and you have all heard it, that have said, Obama didn't do enough for black people. So what he will then do is cater to those small-minded individuals and say, well, hey, I did what your black president couldn't do. And that's actually do something specifically for the minority community.
Those people don't have the intellectual capacity to know that that's nonsense, then this doesn't really matter.
But Rod, how many people? That is America. That is America.
I know. So what is this? What does he stand to gain? As you said, what he stands to lose is his conservative base, who are very staunch in their position. They're not really going to abandon him regardless of what he says. And he's not going to win over too many black people anyway, regardless of what we do, because we see it for what it is.
I disagree.
Okay, so...
But I also want to say this. We are giving, as an aside, we're giving Trump credit for Roger Stone. Roger Stone is the person who masterminded all this behind Trump. and he's the one that also advocated Trump pardoning Marcus Garvey. Also, Trump legalizing marijuana. That's all coming from Roger Stone, and I think it's a brilliant move.
So we're not that's a separate
issue.
But let me.
It's really not a separate issue.
It is a separate issue
because you're talking about the liberalism that
we're talking about.
On.
With respect to this decision, I don't think that this is going to do what he would do if he legalized marijuana.
I check this. Trump
he would do it if he did what you just said. We're talking about specifically this issue about pardoning this yet the extant list of people who from the NFL players. And this is the last thing I want to say on this. So if we're going to entertain this clown, this is what I'm saying. Let's take him up on issue. He's sitting here talking about, pardoning people who are already deceased, Muhammad Ali for things that are similar, who did things similar to.
But there's plenty of people that didn't know that Muhammad Ali.
Understood, but we know, right? We know. So
we know that this president isn't a historian.
Well, can I finish, Brandon?
Well, I'm going at your point.
Hold on, I'm not done. You don't know my point yet. I'm not finished. So if we were to take him up on task. Let's say you want to pardon Muhammad Ali, a guy who stood on principle but was unpopular at the time, right? How about you pardon Colin Kaepernick, in a sense, a guy who stands on principle? He's the guy who's, basically the symbol of this movement.
He won't do that.
I know, but that would take him up on the actual the facts of or the substance of this matter.
But we all agree that Trump is not trying to fix the issue.
So my whole thing, I'm not entertaining this at all, but I don't think there's much bang for the buck out of this.
You got to entertain it, because if you don't entertain it, then you're doing a disservice to the people that he is willing to actually focus on and get out.
You're also saying that this could sway. So
you use the tools
you're
that you're
using
given.
your argument to say that you actually could. You think he actually could sway black people?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So why would you want him to sway black people with this? I think it would be a pyrrhic victory, right?
That sounds dumb, though, Ron. What you're saying is we should cut off our nose to spite our face.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
Because
there are still
right?
real human beings that are sitting in jail for injustices.
So,
yes.
I'm a utilitarian. Let me ask this question, because I thought about exactly what you said. Does the good or the freedom or receipt of justice for one person outweigh
another president?
The terrible things that he's doing to the masses, because that's the game. That's the game. That's the game he's using, and that's why I say it's a master stroke and he can't lose, because the game is no matter what he's doing to take away freedoms on this side, to take away health care, to take away any gains that were made under the Obama administration, to prosecute people in a way that's unfair on the front end, he can come in on the back end and give you let me pick this one person, she's been in jail for 20 years, and free her, and that becomes the news of the day. Or let me pick, even if it ran up to what you said, right? Even if they gave him a list of 5,000 names and 5,000 people went free, does that supersede or offset the millions of people that are being affected?
Exactly.
So I have an answer for you. The first part of it, this is a multi-tiered answer. The first part of that is I want you to go talk to any individual that's sitting in jail and
appeal to emotion.
Hold on.
Appeal to emotion.
You gonna let me talk now?
You
gonna let me talk?
That's
gonna let me talk?
That's not rational.
So no, the answer is no to you. All right, so back to you.
Because that is the crux of the question. Because to you, in the micro,
I told you it's a multi-tier.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It matters a lot to that.
The first tier of this answer is you go talk to any person that's in prison right now that has no way out, that was wrongly in prison, and they will tell you immediately, yes, I want to be. Yes, I think it's worth it.
Exactly.
And I think
is that the calculus we make as a society, though?
So again,
is that
tier
the calculus
one.
We make?
Again, tier one. The second thing is when you talk about putting the onus on the president saying that, you know what, would you rather this let one person out or create an environment where Trump gets to win another election? I think you're putting you are not putting the onus on Black America or minority America to educate themselves. You're putting it all on Trump, saying, you know what, you got this genius guy. Well, where's the responsibility for us to re-educate the people around us? Take what he's going to give us. Hold on. Take what he's going to give us in terms of the pardoning, and then push out the fact that what he's doing is not actually helping the whole situation. I will take whatever he's going to give us because we deserve it, and then on top of that, we still have to fight for the shit that he's doing right now. Just because he gives us a little bit of ice cream doesn't mean that he's giving us the whole meal. And you have to remind people that time and time again. And I think that you're doing a disservice to black people by saying
I'm
one or the
not
other.
doing a disservice.
You haven't addressed the contention,
though. I'm not doing a disservice to black people because I'm not talking about black people, right? What I'm talking about is the people that will decide the election for Trump. The same people that decided the election for him before. Those swing voters, those people who looked at Hillary Clinton and said, not for me. That high percentage of white women who looked at Hillary Clinton and said, she's not for me. Because I don't think black people need to be educated at all about who Trump is, what he stands for, what he believes. They'll take those victories. I saw that, when Ms. Johnson was free, everybody said, that's great, but it's still F Trump, right? That's what black people said. But I'm talking about the people who will swing the election, will not be educated, will not think about all of the other things.
Which is why
that's what I'm saying
is we
that's
still
why so
have to,
many.
we
That's
still
why
have a call to arms to
but
education.
listen, think about this. For the first, how many years are we into the Trump administration?
A year.
Okay. For probably
this is
a year and a half, almost 2 years.
It'll be 2 years.
Right. For the first year.
in.
For the first
We
year.
haven't reached 2 years yet.
For the first year of that administration and almost up to now, if you were a black person who even went to sit with him, you were a pariah, right? Black people was like, you can't.
You still are.
You out here. I don't think.
Unless you're Armenian.
But what's going to happen to the next? What's going to happen to the next black person who goes? Well, Kanye's album's still #1, and he rock with him. But I'm saying the next black person who says, you know what, I'm gonna take him up on that, and I'm gonna go get somebody free. Then you can't. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm saying. That's his game, and that's why it's such a master stroke by him. Because even if black people are educated and understand what the game is, so many other people, and a few black people, are not going to be educated. They're going to look at it, but he let so-and-so go, he must be all right.
I want to say something. This is the last reason why I think it'll fail. And it'd be fun if it did. If he pardoned people that weren't black. So if he went through and everybody got pardoned was like white, and everything we talked about right now,
It'd be better for him.
As far as swinging black,
He wouldn't do that. He knows.
But
that would be
that's what I'm
move.
saying. There are ways he can lose in this situation. But I also do believe we should absolutely take advantage of it. There's no reason to let this go squander. So there's no reason to let these people sit in prison if they can get out. That is pride on our part.
So
yeah, like Brandon said, it's a very layered and detailed question because if it was my mother or my sister or my father sitting in prison, I don't care if you Republican, Democrat, whatever. If you can get him out and he's unjustly convicted,
we're talking about it.
I will not. But I'm talking about on a one-to-one basis, right? When you think about macro and micro, on a one-to-one basis, if I'm looking at somebody who's, I'm like, yo, do whatever you can to get that person out.
This Trump issue is not a zero-sum game.
No,
right.
No,
it's not.
I think I know that. What I'm saying though.
How long are we going on Trump?
Yeah, we can abandon this. But Trump, this is the emotional reaction to this kind of thing is the reason why Trump is playing chess and we're.
Oh yeah, he's definitely playing chess.
You know, I'm sick of Trump.
We can go on.
We're about to do something real fun. Actually, I want to have a discussion about.
Sex?
You know what? It kind of like strip. Yes, sex. Right. So
it better not be about transgender sex.
No.
Why?
Man, come on. Why would you even agree? Like,
what's wrong?
I almost asked you politely to leave.
Well, I would let.
So you should after that bullshit comment. So we all know about R. Kelly's coming back up into the limelight, so to speak. Do y'all think for artists of entertainment that we should separate the artist's actions from the artist's art?
No.
So should you be still listening to R. Kelly's music or whoever's music or TV shows, Cosby Show, whatever it is, separate from who they are as a person? Or should they be combined and saying, you know what, we shouldn't be supporting somebody that came from that type of environment and supporting the craft that they did because they're too conjoined. They're too symbiotic.
But can you
to
clarify the
separate
question?
the two.
Are we talking about people whose behavior are like, they're creating acts that are heinous?
We're talking about socially, universally socially immoral behavior.
There's no universally social.
But I mean, for all intents and purposes, when you talk about in today's society, under pedophilia, or you talk about
we're talking about drug use though, like somebody who's a drug addict. Would you agree that that's something?
Okay, but none of the
so we're talking about people who victimize other people, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's the distinction.
All right, so I would say this: I almost never believe in broad strokes. I think everything should be taken on a case by case basis, a situation by situation. So with R. Kelly, I've always felt this way. If you supported R. Kelly after that whole situation with that underage girl and peeing, support his ass now. If you stop then stop now. Or whatever. So if you were watching him with Chocolate
but
Factory,
should you be?
After,
That's the question.
It's a great album, and I love that song. And Step in the Name of Love, I still sing to that. But I'm saying, if after that, when you supported him, you still do. Bill Cosby
on purpose, so you know that I don't support R. Kelly.
So Bill Cosby to me is slightly different. One, whatever happened with Bill Cosby happened way before the Cosby Show, and it appears to not have involved the Cosby Show. Two, the Cosby Show reflects more than just Bill Cosby.
I'm confused by what you're saying right now.
Because I was with you, Damon.
You've conflated.
You lost me.
Like what you said was.
You lost me.
Because on one side you say what R. Kelly did, R. Kelly, and then said, but what Bill Cosby did, it had nothing to do with the show. Well, pissing on little girls had nothing to do with his album. It didn't.
Man,
I mean, so I don't see how you separate the actions
because
of the
R.
two.
Kelly stuff included pissing on other girls,
assuming that you
and
believe
also
Cosby
included
actually
the whole sex dungeon thing and making girls out of stars. Cosby, what I'm talking about, for me, is different because Cosby's show involved more than just Bill Cosby. Although it was a Bill Cosby show, it had more actors, more artists involved than just him, and certainly they all weren't reflective in what he did by himself. And two, when the medium of the Cosby Show came out, that was itself very far. Like when Bill Cosby, all the stuff that happened in the 70s, a different time period. Not saying it was right, but a different time period. Cosby Show popped in the 80s or mid to late 80s, 90s.
So do you stop listening to R. Kelly?
Like I said, if you stop listening to R.
Does
Kelly,
Damon stop listening?
I have not.
Hey, stop bullying Damon.
I have not stopped.
I'll tell you how I dissect this.
And I won't.
Like I said, I clarify. Like people who have character flaws that can incorporate like victimizing other people, I don't support them, right? I try not to be. I think that would be the ideal. I would not support a person like that. With R. Kelly, I make a major distinction with him. All those songs I fell in love with, those songs that I was in 8th grade, I was at the dance, rocking up on my first love, Honey Love playing, that's already in my spirit. I can't get rid of that. But after the fact that I knew he was a pedophile, he was an arch pedophile, I stopped supporting R. Kelly. Anything after that. So that's how I feel about it. Personally.
So pre-knowledge you
yeah.
still bump to.
Where there's no knowledge, there's no, listen, men's real.
Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss, what he said.
What do you call support, though?
Purchasing records.
Listening, buying, supporting with your dollars, supporting
Depends
with
on
your
which.
ears.
There's levels to everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever you feel like your support should start or stop at.
I think every person has their own moral line. It's for each person. If something is near and dear to your heart, you're gonna feel a different way about it. If somebody that you know or you personally were affected by pedophilia, you'll feel a different way. If somebody if you grew up in a house and your father was putting his hands on your mother, you may feel a different way about Miles Davis.
So do you stop listening to C Murder because he murdered somebody?
I mean, it depends. If he murdered somebody I knew, it might feel a little different. I mean, that's what I say. Every person has a personal line. I don't listen to him anyway because it's C Murder.
Why is it a tougher?
Because C Murder's persona involves violence.
Persona is different from reality.
No. But let me ask you a question. So is the line drawn because you have knowledge of what that person did, or because of the type of art they created? So if R. Kelly we know what he did, and then the songs that we listen to, we say, oh man, he was probably singing about some little girl. It changes in your mind? Or does it say, you know what, time and place for me? When I heard that song, it made me feel a certain way. It's subjective to me. I like the song, and therefore, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm looking at the art and not the artist. Like,
so I guess for me, I look at and like Damon said, there are levels to this, and there's no carte blanche answer to it. However, I think that whatever the action is, if the action is so egregious to you that you feel like that as a human, like if this wasn't a person, if this was a person that you knew personally, that you would have to say, you know what, you can't be in my life because of the type of actions that you took, you should apply that same type of feeling to this star that you've put on this pedestal. Because if you're willing to cut off somebody,
I'm gonna be raw for a minute. I'm gonna use moral relativism. It's a big word. I'm using my doctor word. But people are morality on a relative basis. People are moral about things insofar as it doesn't encroach on something that is near and dear to them. Right. So that's why you have people that'll say, if it was the guy from Seventh Heaven who did what he did, instead of Bill Cosby, you be like, man, cancel it. I ain't watching that, but it's Seventh Heaven. Who cares? But if you got to stop watching Denise and Theo and Rudy, you like, well, you know, man, it was a little bit different in Bill. We don't know for sure. And he, you know, it's just relative to your morality. If it was something that means a lot to you, and if it's a certain piece of art that means something to you, like if somebody came out tomorrow and said Run DMC was doing foul shit the whole time, I'm gonna be like, well, that's just fucked up. But I ain't gonna stop listening to
But Charles, if the dude from Seventh Heaven was your cousin, would you still fuck with him?
No.
Okay.
But that's not even remotely the same thing.
For me,
this guy right here.
That's not remotely the same thing. That's not close to the same thing.
It is because what I'm saying is if you knew that person personally and they did the same action, it shouldn't matter if you know them, don't know them.
It absolutely makes a difference because we're all more.
I don't see it.
So you tell wait. So you telling me every piece of art that goes against your moral code, as soon as you find out that person did something that was immoral to you, you cancel that person and that art.
I said if I knew that person personally, and whatever they did was so morally egregious to me.
Let's go through domestic violence.
Because I rock with Chris Brown.
Domestic violence.
So I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, let's start with domestic violence.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't really fuck with Chris Brown like that. Like his music is cool, but I'm not putting hands on shit. If I know what Miles does, then I'm not gonna fuck with Miles.
But that's what I'm saying. We get relative. It's until it hits somebody that you like, oh, not him.
No,
because it's like what's happening with the Me Too stuff. It's like I get a text every other time from somebody that I know. Like, damn, they got Russell Simmons. Oh damn, they got Morgan Freeman. Oh damn, they got.
They didn't get Morgan though.
But
they screwed Morgan over.
Until it gets close to home, everybody, everybody is like has this hard line against. Oh, R. Kelly is wrong. Yeah, R. Kelly is dead wrong.
Social media has made us
until it hits somebody. You still jamming Michael Jackson though.
One quick. Mike got accused by at least 2 different people. Had 2 different trials.
Mike was just an innocent white man.
Hey, one quick fun fact. Never mind the fact that R. Kelly was subconsciously normalizing pedophilia for years. Did y'all recall in that song Vibe when he was like itemizing all the girls?
Little Cute Aaliyah got it.
Little Cute Aaliyah's got it. Y'all didn't know that, did you?
Yeah,
Go back and this guy was overt in his pedophilia. That's my problem with R. Kelly. I mean, I didn't know as a young man, but
he didn't even try to. He didn't try to hide stuff at all. So so that's what you're saying your issue was? That he was just callous with it?
When I went back and looked at it, I was like, man.
So it wasn't that he did it. It was just that he was brazen with it.
The whole time
he was telling us.
My mind's telling me.
But here's the shitty part. A lot of artists of any caliber, musicians, poets, whatever, suffer from demons that some we don't understand. It sucks.
All of them do.
And we don't understand it. Some of them is like a mental illness we can't get our hands on. Some of it like R. Kelly we can't wrap our hands around. You can pretty much go through a lot of artists through generations and find shit that you're like, fuck, I can't believe you did that or she did that.
We was rocking with Kevin Spacey up until last year. Everybody
liked Kevin Spacey.
Of course, when you don't know,
but you know, like even on OJ's, like I watch the thing about them, even they have some shade in their past, and I still love Forever Mine.
Which is why I put the caveat of so morally egregious to you. There's some things that you're like, you know what, I don't like what you did. But that's not morally egregious.
Morally relative morality. That's all it is.
I agree with Chuck on that.
You can't divorce your love of a song, an artist, and the things they've done prior to that.
You kind of can, because you can listen to that person. If it's something that really just bothers you to your core about what they did, you start to lose a taste for that music itself because you hear this person and you're thinking about it. At least that's how I would.
Unless, like Rod said, you go back and hear a song and hear this motherfucker is telling us he likes little kids, and we just chose not to listen to it. Age ain't nothing but a number. Is a.
But you were singing it though. But you were singing it though.
Pedophile outcry.
So now you're a subconscious pedophile.
But you go back and you hear it and you know it. So in that situation, I'm with you, Rod. When you go back and they're telling you, I like little, and it seems to be little kids is the line. I like little kids. And now you cut that off. So now I can't hear Vibe anymore. I can't hear it anymore.
Well,
and it is what it is.
It is, and that's the bottom line. It is what it is. And fellas, it is what it is for the show. This is a great test run for us, I think. Facebook users, go ahead and at the end of the show, Type what you feel about it. Tell us what you want to see from us, what you want to hear from us. It's going to get better, progressively better. We'll have graphics, we'll have all that kind of stuff as time goes on. We're building this from the ground up, ladies and gentlemen. So our goal is to make sure that we give you the best of the best, not only in discourse, but also in entertainment. So if you're not laughing while we talk about some serious issues, we want you to be able to listen to it and not leave stressed out.
Stand up, let them see your jeans. Stand up, let them see your jeans.
Well, the hate is always going to be real on this show. And it's going to be coming cannons to the left of me, cannons to the right of me. Volley and thunder right here. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed us tonight. We'll be doing this every week on Monday nights, starting at roughly 9 o'clock. We're going to try to hold ourselves to a generalized 9 o'clock start time on Monday nights. I hope to see you next week. And we're out with IntelliGents.